How We Can Overcome National Divisions. A presentation by Paul Brackey, author, publisher of American Leadership Books. Author of 9 books on social, political, and criminal justice issues. America is more divided than ever today. This is shown in different perspectives on various issues. These include the Mueller Report, reactions to efforts to build the wall, views about the immigration crisis, attitudes toward public versus private education, opinions about establishing a tax policy, and more. Almost every decision made nationally, in regions, and in cities is subject to an intense political fight. Then the battle continues in the courts. There may be bipartisan consensus on some issues. But often there is a breakdown on what to do to fix the problem. 2 examples are these: the growing homeless population in many cities, due in part to higher housing costs. The loss of many jobs, due to the growth of technology in many industries. In this presentation, I want to describe the major reasons for these divisions in America and then suggest how to heal these divisions. A goal is to improve relationships between members of different groups. Another is to increase unity and cohesiveness in America as a whole. The U.S. is like a giant pie which has been cut into so many pieces that it is on the verge of falling apart. This is reflected in the following divisions. The Civil War never really ended, since blacks and whites never succeeded in mending fences. The North-South divide continues and is further complicated by a divide involving Hispanics. There are also divides between the coasts and the heartland. Other divides include these: there is a divide between rural and urban America. Today the hostility is greater than ever in Republican and Democrat Party battles. There are generational divides between different groups, especially between Generation X, the Millennials and Baby Boomers. There are gender divides, financial divides, and differences in one's education level. Though it might seem impossible to bring these often warring factions back together, there is hope. That's because the partisans on each side of the divide are interdependent. And the solutions to be discussed can help to bring us back together. The roots of the divide are in this country being born of slaveholders. George Washington and many who signed the Declaration of Independence and Constitution were slaveholders. Although slaves were treated very badly, they were very valuable. Although they were expensive, at least $20,000 in today's dollars, a lot of wealthy families in the South could afford them. 31% of families in the Confederacy owned slaves. Slaves made up 38% of the South's population. Since the entire economy of the South depended on slaves, the threat to their states' rights led to the Civil War. The war resulted in 600,000 deaths, as many as in all other U.S. wars combined. The country is still traumatized by the war, especially in the South. This is reflected in support for the Confederacy and its symbols. This support has continued in many communities throughout the South. Southerners, Northerners, and blacks continued to harbor deep resentments due to the war. Southerners not only lost the war, but many lost their most valuable property. So they blamed the North and the slaves for the devastation of the war. And they still had to live with former slaves. Many Northerners had negative attitudes towards former slaves who migrated north, since they saw them competing for their jobs. Though blacks were free, they had little income and felt they were considered unequal. Many were forced into sharecropping in the South. They had to struggle in the North in low-paying jobs. The racial divide has continued today, most notably through the concentration of a black underclass in the inner cities. This underclass developed because blacks faced extensive segregation in most U.S. cities. This segregation occurred because each ethnic group was most comfortable in its own neighborhood. The black neighborhoods became the poorest and most crime-ridden. Much of the crime was due to impoverished conditions. White flight to the suburbs also contributed to the concentration of crime and poverty. Other factors contributed to the concentration of blacks in inner-city neighborhoods. President Johnson's 1964 War on Poverty led to a welfare system which trapped many poor blacks in a subsistence existence without sufficient incentive to improve their lot. Affirmative action programs beginning in 1964 helped to establish a black middle class, but they soon moved to the suburbs, leaving poor blacks behind. An unintended consequence of these well-meaning programs was that the increasingly impoverished hood became rife with crime. More and more blacks were locked up, often for petty crimes and with long sentences. This incarceration further decimated the hood and broke down families. The problem of poverty and crime has contributed to many difficulties faced by black males. As many as a third of all black men end up in prison during their life. Due to being convicted or imprisoned for a crime, many black men have difficulty getting jobs. Due to the breakdown in black families, 2/3 of all blacks are raised by single moms. Many young black males raised by a single mom have no good male role models to guide them to live a more productive life. Growing up under these conditions, many black males drop out of school, face very high unemployment rates, and participate in a lot of violent crime. The high rate of crime in black neighborhoods has contributed to the distrust that black males and police feel for each other. The police believe they are appropriately responding by investigating crimes and arresting suspects. Black males feel they are being harassed by the police. The result is that blacks and the police distrust each other. Whites who have moved to the suburbs are generally apathetic about what happens in the hood. They are generally not concerned if what happens doesn't affect them. The mix of black police confrontation and middle-class white apathy is toxic. Middle-class whites tend to support the police, further adding to the tension between blacks and police. Most cases of police shooting black citizens are by white police officers. Most cases are resolved by finding that the police officers used reasonable force. The officers believed their life was in danger from a suspect who appeared to have a gun. But black community members believe the officer got off due to unfair treatment by the police and judicial system. In North Charleston, white police officer Michael Slager was tried for the 2015 shooting death of Walter Scott. The trial result was a hung jury. But Slager later pled guilty to violating Scott's civil rights through excessive force. Slager got a 20-year prison sentence in December 2017. In Chicago, white police officer Jason Van Dyke received a second-degree murder guilty verdict in 2018 for killing 17-year-old teen Lacon McDonald in 2014. The jury had 7 whites, 3 Hispanics, 1 Asian American, and 1 African American. Establish more community policing. Recruit more black cops to help police in high-crime neighborhoods. Give all police special training in community interaction. Train police to use less force to calm down a suspect to make an orderly arrest. Screen the police for personality characteristics in common with police who have killed innocent blacks or have shot too quickly at suspects resisting arrest. Assign personality types who respond aggressively too quickly to desk duties or low-crime neighborhoods. Encourage communities to set up neighborhood watches in the black community. Young blacks raised by single moms need better role models. Respected black politicians and community leaders would be good role models. Well-known personalities, such as sports figures, would also be good examples for kids. Young black girls need better access to long-term contraceptives to decrease the high rate of teen pregnancies, which trap many single moms into the welfare system. Discrimination against blacks by whites has continued to be a major source of friction. Desegregation was designed to contribute toward long-term greater integration. The presumption was that children of different races growing up together wouldn't be subjected to the same sort of racial intolerance as their parents. Desegregation in the 50s, 60s, and 70s caused a white backlash. White parents resented and resisted busing to other neighborhoods. Students from different races tended to self-segregate, though became more familiar and perhaps less fearful of each other. Segregation is difficult to stop for many reasons. Most U.S. cities are carved into ethnic neighborhoods. People from different backgrounds prefer to remain with their own. Whites too often are ignorant of the plight of blacks, some consider themselves superior. Following are some suggestions for ending segregation. Whites should consider hard-working blacks in middle-class white communities as they would hard-working immigrants, not by their skin color. Whites should resist the temptation to abandon neighborhoods after a few blacks or immigrants move in. If they stayed, housing prices would be less likely to depreciate. One way to promote more integration is to use as a model the military's success in molding racially desegregated teams. These teams are organized to provide the needed skills. The military doesn't use affirmative action. The blending of different ethnic and racial groups shows how mixed groups can get along and gain insights into each other's cultures and ideas. The military's emphasis on teamwork contributed to great acceptance of minority groups in the unit. Another idea for furthering integration is providing more pre-job training. This training could be provided for unskilled workers or prisoners about to be released. The training program might be modeled after the military's approach of providing desegregated boot camp type training. Instead of using affirmative action, each recruit should be considered equally, and judged based on performance alone as in the military. Private sources might contribute to supporting such training, since individuals are judged on merit and skills to prepare them for jobs in different industries. Previous books and chapters on the national divides in the U.S. Fractured America. Chapters in Crime in America. Uncertain Justice. For more information, American Leadership Books. Little Rock, Arkansas. www.americanleadershipbooks.com. Info@americanleadershipbooks.com